Hey, Dad.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you.
Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our guest. Thank you for tuning in. This is Discussions with Dad, Faith, Blood, and the In Between. And you're gearing up. It is April 22nd. You're getting ready. When do you leave for your Run the Wall
May
motorcycle?
6th. May
May
6th.
6th, a couple of days after my 48th
Birthday.
birthday. And so this is a live episode that we are taping right now. And then, of course, this afternoon, we're going to tape our second May episode, which you will then be hopefully on your way successfully back to or headed towards Colorado.
Yes, by then probably. Yeah.
What do you have to do to prepare for this? I know what you have to do, but just share really quickly for our listening audience what this race, or it's not a race, this ride entails.
Well, just number one, of course, you make sure your motorcycle's 100%, gone over and everything's ready to go and up to snuff because we ride about 8,000 miles. Last year we rode 8,500. I don't think it'll be quite as much this year because we won't screw around as much on the way back. So that's one thing. And then physically, you have to, I've been doing lots of push-ups, sit-ups,
Yeah,
squats, everything to try and get in some kind of shape.
getting back in shape.
Yeah. So, and endurance. And then you go on we've gone on 3 or 4, well, probably 3 long rides, just to get your butt in shape. One of them was 1,180 miles in 2 days. So I think we had a 600-mile day, which is a really long day. Yeah. So it's just that kind of stuff. And then mentally be focused.
Well, speaking of focus, let's focus in on our core promises, the agreements that you and I make, and that we kind of try to hold ourselves to. Even when we disagree, we will practice patience and love over certainty. We've been doing a lot better at that one. We will tell the truth with care. And we will listen to understand, not convince, convert, or prove wrong. And of course, as always, this podcast reflects our personal opinions and our lived experiences, but it does not in any way offer any kind of advice other than let's start having conversations. Hopefully, conversations lead to deeper connection and community.
Yes.
And on that note, what happens when trust breaks down in a community? What happens when trust breaks down? I'm curious to know about a time in your life when someone you trusted let you down, and what did that experience teach you about trust? And I'm thinking like in your childhood, like when you had a big moment in your childhood that everything you thought you knew was shattered.
Man, I don't think I had anything in my childhood that was that dramatic. Um, you know,
Nothing?
I can't think of any one person that I trusted that broke that trust in my childhood.
Okay.
In my adult life, there's been several,
Yeah,
of course.
sure.
Yeah. Why, you
But
want me to talk about them?
no, I'm curious to know when and maybe this explains a lot, especially to our listening audience. I know who you are as my dad for the last almost 48 years, but maybe this explains a lot of why your perspective comes off a little naive in certain areas about like things like why people in inner cities struggle the way that they do. Because you had and you've said in the past on this podcast that your childhood was pretty idyllic, and that
Definitely.
you have this romanticized idea of what America was when you were a child specifically, and still can be.
Oh, yeah.
And but what we need to get to, I think, for both of us is a time early on, or let me ask it a different way. When you were younger, who taught you which source or which people you could trust, and why were they trustworthy, and do you still trust them now?
Well, obviously my parents, and they're gone. Um,
Right.
I I think one of the changes that happened, and I don't know this to be a fact, but just thinking about it, I believe there was a time in my childhood, almost all of my childhood, that you could trust all your neighbors. Okay, Richard and Mabel,
Okay.
Robert and I mean Leonard and Millie, the Gribbons. You know exactly what I'm talking about. All my neighbors, I could trust any one of them to do the right thing for me. If I was messing up, they would take care of it. And they had our best interest in mind. And same thing with school teachers. I trusted explicitly every one of my school teachers. I don't think I ever mistrusted any of my school teachers all the way up through high
Okay.
school. And
But
I think
okay,
I
so
think that
wait, let's
might
put a
have
pin in
changed.
that.
I don't know. I
Hold
don't know if
on.
that's changed or not. It seems like it has,
Well, let's
but
put a pin on it because I don't think it was as glamorous as you remember it to be. In that, and we'll keep names out of things, but there are neighbors that you were close friends with and grew up with, and their kids. You said you could trust. You named the parents that were friends with your parents, but
right.
they had kids who had problems, and then and you know the problems, and then you talk about teachers, but there were also teachers that because I graduated, as fate would have it, from the same high school that you graduated from, and some of the teachers that were there when you were there were still there when I was there, and there were rumors when you were there, and there were rumors when I was there of things that were done that were not on the up and up. So
Yeah, but your
this is what
question
this is.
was
No,
but your
but my
question was
question,
who I trusted.
right, but and my question deeper than who you trusted is why? Who taught you that they were trustworthy sources, and why did you just blindly trust them?
Well, I think my answer to that is twofold. My parents taught me that, but also their actions taught me that. I didn't trust anybody after they burnt me once ever again.
So
I don't
speak to
remember
that. That's what I'm asking about. So
yeah.
who was the first person in your childhood that
I
burned
can't
you?
I can't think of one in my childhood. I really can't. And it'll probably come to me later, but I'm really trying to think of someone who I really really hurt me.
So let me ask you this. You were never challenged by authority then in your childhood.
Oh, but you remember, and because you know those teachers that were still there. I was pretty darn ornery when I was a kid, and whenever I got in trouble, every time, not when, every time I got in trouble, Matt, I deserved it every
Okay,
time.
Dad, but you're I hear you.
So,
And
so it's hard for me to.
this is where you are with the when you look at something in society and you can't say that was an injustice, even though what led to that injustice was also not correct.
Right.
You
I
have
don't. I
you,
don't think any injustices was done against me that
but
I
there.
could, that were crazy, that marred me, that made me think about injustice in general.
Okay,
As a child, as an adolescent and a young adult. Afterwards, yes, there was injustices,
okay.
but
So then, how about this? Specifically, of a teacher, it can be from elementary through middle into high school or into college. The first time you remember being wrong about a person, a teacher specifically, that you thought you could trust, but they didn't end up sharing the same belief as you or didn't have the same core structure as you.
man, I'm telling you, I'm thinking this really hard. I'm trying to think of who it would be. Someone. What you're basically saying is who disappointed me, even just disappointed me, let alone went the step farther. That
What
hurt me
about
or
challenge? No one challenged you?
oh, they challenged me all the time. Yeah, I
Like,
mean
how?
to be better, just to be better, and thank God they did. I had I've told you this a million times. I had really, really, really good teachers, really good teachers. Even the ones that I didn't really care for that much.
Okay, so okay,
I,
wait, we're getting off topic. Think about one person, one teacher that challenged you in a way that you don't have one person. I'll give you an example. In biology class, my sophomore year, I was at a performing arts high school, you know which one, in Orange County, and my biology teacher, Mr. Schneider, said, put out a statement as fact that the earth was created by this big explosion, blah, 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 blah. And I rose my hand and I was like, but also there's another theory that there's a creator and God, and he was like, no, that's wrong. And I was like, no, it's not wrong. It's wrong from your point of view, but it
Right.
might be right. And I don't even know back then I wouldn't argue faith the way that I would argue faith now, and that I believed in God, but I didn't think it was my duty to stand up to speak on behalf of it.
Oh,
I
can
just
take care of himself, huh? Yeah.
well, I just knew that there were 2 other girls in the class that were very religious and led with that and felt very uncomfortable and didn't and wouldn't speak up for themselves. So I
See,
remember doing that.
I didn't experience that. My biology teacher, Miss Boyd, was a Christian, and um, she taught, as you know, back when I was going through school, Darwin's evolution was being taught. But she taught both. She mentioned both. The textbook said one thing because the textbook could only say one thing, and it talked about evolution. But she talked about the other, and
But in
I
those
was
textbooks,
never
it doesn't necessarily not leave room for faith if people have faith.
right. Right. No, it doesn't. And
Okay,
she made that perfectly clear. She made
right.
that perfectly clear that you know this is taught and this is what some scientists believe.
But this
Okay,
is the
that's
point.
fine.
This is the I agree with that, and I agree with your teacher. This is the point that I why I brought up my biology teacher my sophomore year was that I think anytime someone says something with all certainty and without any kind of irony, then I think that they consider themselves an expert on something that no one knows.
Right.
Science can't prove one thing, and there are a lot of things that science can't prove, and one of them is that whether or not there is God, and
All right.
that's
Of
what
course
faith
not.
is. That's what you and I know. But
Right.
but if you don't have these people in your life, Dad, if you don't have someone along the way who challenged your perspective and worldview, then where did you form? How do you have a
I did
what
have that,
is
but
your worldview?
well, it started in college. That challenging started in college. It never happened that I can remember in high school or junior high, which we used to call it, or grade school. My I think the challenges started in college. You
No
know.
one made fun of your height growing up,
Well, yeah, of course,
and
of
that
course.
didn't and someone that you cared about made fun of your height, and that didn't cause you to have a moment where you were like, "Oh, so even sometimes nice people can be hurtful or mean."
Well, yeah, no, of course that happened. Not. I mean, none of it was devastating, but yeah, of course that happened.
I'm not
Yeah.
looking for the devastation, I'm looking for the framework for what gives you your perspective on because then when we go to have a conversation and hopefully we're gonna bring people in the fall from different parts of the communities that we can't speak on behalf of, women, trans people, the Black and brown community, um, a whole bunch of different things that we've kind of tabled, and we'll have that kitchen table conversation. Uh, but in order to understand, because I'm really trying to understand, I still honestly can't get past. And we were having a private conversation today about the fate of the world and Trump specifically, and I can't get past how someone and Christianity, how someone can vote for someone who doesn't possess any of the qualities that they hold themselves accountable to and or the faith that they believe in.
You brought this up before, and we've
I
talked it.
no, I know. We talk about it, and I don't wanna go I don't wanna have the same conversation we've had, but that's I'm trying to understand the backstory of that. So, I guess, okay, so you never really did pick someone who you lost trust in terms of a leadership or so when was the first time someone of of some sort of authority or power or like a boss or even a colleague that where you experienced a trust outside of a family trust lost or broken? Obviously, you went through a divorce, so there was a marital distrust.
That was
But
probably the worst one that ever happened to me as far as trust is concerned.
okay,
That
but that doesn't really speak
so,
to
but yeah, and set that one aside. Yeah.
yeah. So who was it? Did there no boss ever lied to you about something? No, I mean, you really haven't had any challenge in your life?
I get challenged all the time, challenged to do better, but not. I mean, there's bosses that ask me to lie for them, and I flat just told them no.
Okay.
That's not going to happen. You know, say this if you're asked, and no, I'm going to say what happened. You know, that's happened a couple times from bosses, and I don't know if I lost trust in them, because I'm not so sure. I didn't know they were that way before I even started. I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? They were capable of doing things like that, and I was well aware they were capable of doing things like that. So obviously, I didn't lose faith in them because didn't have that much faith in them in the first place. You know what I
Right.
mean? Maybe I was
Yeah.
just maybe I was naive to some of it. Maybe I was a really good judge of character and I pegged them right from the very beginning, and therefore you're not going to disappoint me. Um, I know
Okay. So
what's the Eagle song say? I know you won't let me down because I'm already standing on the ground.
uh,
You know,
thin ground,
on the ground.
on thin ground.
No, no,
No,
no. But that's okay.
on the ground. Yeah. Okay.
You're going to question me on an Eagles song. Oh
Well,
no.
no, I
I
wasn't
could sing the
questioning.
whole thing for you. If I could sing, I would sing the whole thing for you right
Okay,
now.
so let's go down the list. Let's no, not of the Eagles. Getting back to our what I'm trying to figure out, which is where someone somewhere in your life outside of your personal relationship, where an employer or what about there? You've never voted for a politician and felt like I shouldn't have voted for them.
Oh yeah, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, you talked about him. No one
Yeah,
else
in
though.
1976, first time I ever voted. I was
Okay,
totally disappointed.
okay. So then let's go straight to media. Where did you did you read a newspaper when you were a kid in high school? Or
Oh yeah,
I know grandma and grandpa did around the
yeah.
table.
No, I did. Yeah.
So you read the paper every day before school, do you think?
No, no,
No.
no, not every day before school.
Only when the teacher gave an assignment for a
No,
current
probably
event.
once a week. I'd read like the Sunday paper and stuff like that. When the Pueblo Chieftain would come on Sunday, I would read it. I remember that quite a bit. And KNC Daily Record, of course, I read whenever I was in an article about sports or something, you
Right.
know,
So
or sports, or my friends were.
when was the moment in your adolescence or in high school when something caught your eye that was newsworthy in the paper or
Oh,
on television?
oh, all the way back to on television, John F. Kennedy when he was assassinated. That was way newsworthy, you know. And
Mhm.
we sat around the TV right after that and watched it. You know, watched everything that they said. Then once again, the Vietnam War was going on the whole time in the '60s, pretty much the whole time in the '60s. I was growing up, so we saw that every night. You come home and see that every
And
night.
so when you were growing up, there was equally I mean, it's way more gratuitous and 24/7 now, the news cycle, but there were things that were being very highly celebrated, like the moon landing or,
Moon landing in
um
'69, all the space race. You knew how much I loved all of that, anyways.
right, or but also the assassination of a sitting president on live
Martin Luther
television during a
King,
parade, Martin
John
Luther King.
Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy.
And so where would you what station did you and your family watch? I know the answer to this, but I'm curious.
Well, there was only 3, NBC, CBS, and ABC. There
Yeah,
was only 3.
and who did where did you get you which
Well,
of the
I
3?
think we probably watched, I can't remember what Johnny Carson was on. I think it was
NBC.
NBC. Yeah, so
He
we
was
probably
in
watched NBC, which was Channel 5 here where we live, the most for a lot of reasons. Number one, it came in the best because remember, it wasn't cable. You had an
right,
antenna. I watched ABC because it was Wide World of Sports, but it came in the worst, and I had to go outside, and Grandpa would have me turn the antenna to make it get to ABC better, because
right.
sometimes it just wouldn't come in, And then PBS came out. I don't know how old I was when PBS came out. I remember it coming out, and there was some stuff I liked on it early on PBS. So that's really all we watched. And I know what you're kind of asking because when Walter Cronkite and
Well, that's what I
David
was gonna ask
Brinkley,
is who did you who was on
oh,
NBC?
Walter Cronkite, David Brinkley, all those guys, Huntley Brinkley was on, Johnny Carson, of course, all through my life, I watched him. And I don't
Johnny
ever
Carson.
remember.
So wait, because the and this is what this is what I think is so fascinating about what the world that we live in now. There are many podcasters who have opinion based podcasts where they talk about the news like they know facts and history, which they don't, and which we're not claiming or trying to be. Then there are actual broadcast news sources and journalists on podcasts like Megan Kelly, who went to journalism school, also went to law school, like did like is a journalist like what you would probably compare Walter Cronkite to, in which they ask specific journalistic questions: who, what, when, where, why. They report the news. They make sure that they have at least one source that can vouch for the information that they're going to share. It's vetted.
Right.
It's right. So back then, and you and I've had this conversation off camera, but back then, all ABC, NBC, CBS, and I think even PBS, which was also, you know, like you said, someone who was reporting the news on local network broadcasts, they all got their information from the same source, which was the Associated Press. So basically, anyone in any regional location or market
Nationally,
would, yeah, nationally would send out a journalist. And
and there was a UP API back then, Matt. There was not just Associated Press. There was the UP and the
okay,
API. So
okay,
there was
so
two ticker tape press
but
machines.
my point is these three or four, let's say three, because there were really three: ABC, NBC,
Right.
CBS. And then
Right.
eventually, I think most television historians would argue then Fox in the 80s became the fourth major. I don't think they'd argue PBS was vying for advertising space like the way that Fox was, or ABC or NBC or CBS. Anyway, these three and then eventually four globe national syndicate networks all got most of the news from the same source and trusted that one source and whatever the national news. And then eventually, if it stayed a big news story, they would send out their own reporters to cover
Right. They had
the
their
news.
own reporters
Right. So now
nationally.
so now my question is, who do you trust? Then CNN came in and all of the cable newses came in. Fox had their cable news, and now after the 2020 election, OWN and all of these different news sources, and anyone can basically say whatever they want now. And it doesn't seem like anyone really cares about
The
really
truth.
vetting the information.
Right.
They can just retract it. I'm just using anything that went down after October 7th, and the lead up into what's going on, or what went on at the very beginning of between Gaza and Israel, and how anyone could just report whatever they wanted, and that information lived in the public domain and the public knowing, even if it was wrong. And so the media is able to paint a picture of whatever they want the narrative to be. When do you feel that changed for you? Like, when did you stop trusting the media?
Yeah. I mean, I even remember when CNN came out at the very first, when CNN came out, I trusted them. You know, they had a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East and stuff that they were reporting better than anybody, you know. Um, I don't
Yeah,
know. That's
they
a
were
great
sending people
question.
out there.
I don't know. I mean, I don't. I know I never did, and I'm not so sure that ABC, CBS, and NBC didn't lie to us. Also, can't say they did or they didn't. I don't know. I guess you could do some research and go back and find out things they reported and find out if it was true or not now in hindsight. But I don't remember ever mistrusting them when I was listening to any of them. They held each other accountable back then. If you came up with a scoop, because they like to beat each other with a scoop,
Mhm.
and I guarantee you, if CBS reported something that was false, ABC and NBC would be the first ones to come out and say, that's false. This is what happened. And I don't think that happened a lot, but I think it did happen because
So
people really,
I think that's a really good point. That there were, even in the mostly left-leaning media, there were checks and balances
oh, yeah,
between, they held themselves accountable. For me, I think that went
definitely.
away in the 2016 election
Oh, I
for
think it was
me.
before that.
Well, but for me, when I really noticed that none of the networks, including the cable networks or the big four, none of them were gonna hold each other accountable. They wanted to get out who won, like Hillary or what, and then some of them had to go back, and so I mean, yeah, I guess the same thing could be true with 2000 election with Al Gore and George Bush,
Oh yeah, the hanging Chad.
and they kind of did the same thing there.
Oh, well, that was a cluster. That was a yeah, it really. I
The
mean,
difference there to now is that we as a country trusted both two things. We trusted our institutions and we trusted the media. We trusted the media to come back and say we made a mistake, we called it too early, and we trusted the institutions, the local and federal levels of election, to go back and recount those and make sure that they were counted right.
right.
Now we don't have that. We don't have media trust, and
I
we
don't
don't
think so.
have
I don't trust
institutional
them.
trust.
I
So
don't trust them.
right. So then when and I know you've said a version of this before, but I'm asking you an honest question. You've said all when I see it, you reported like you use the analogy of being on your bike and seeing that there were actual protesters protesting against Donald Trump, right? And you said when I see it, then I'll believe it. But there are certain things that we're not going to be able to see. Certain things like what's actually going on in Iran or what's
Right.
actually going on the ground somewhere, in Venezuela or whatever. So how are you? Why are you trusting the people you're trusting?
Well, I think that one thing that takes place now that couldn't take place back then. Let's use uh, let's use World War II or Korea, even Vietnam. Okay,
Okay.
in Vietnam, that's probably the best one because that's the one I remember the most. Obviously, I
Okay.
wasn't around for Korea or World War II, but in Vietnam, we would get reports every night, and there'd be different reports on ABC, CBS, and NBC, but they all were reporting about the same thing. But there was no one in Vietnam with one of these that could say, "Wait a minute, this is what really happened," and click it.
So you think when the world received access to personal cell phone and
Oh man, it changed
instant,
everything. It changed everything. I mean, think about
but
that. They could have been
even
lied
that
to
can
it,
be
manipulated.
we've been back and forth so many times about the George Floyd thing and like the camera angle and this or that or the other, or the shooter, the protester that had the concealed carry and the angles, all everything can be manipulated. Everything,
Right.
and everything is based on fear and public control, wanting to control.
It was
So
almost it was almost like ignorance was bliss, Matt, because when they reported on Vietnam, we had to take their word for it because there was nobody else that was there that could say anything different that was happening. There was
okay,
those three. And usually, like I said, they would call each other out once in a great while, but most of the time it was pretty consistent because they didn't want to be made a fool. Well, now that's gone. That's totally gone. Because of that, we kind of know what's going on in Iran. There's people sneaking stuff out of Iran all the time, saying, "Hey, this is happening." We know certain things that happen, with the 2 3 wrestlers and stuff like that. They showed that video I sent you. Now here's where it gets dicey, really dicey, is because like that video I sent you about that woman, the 16-year-old girl, and it was terrible. It was a terrible thing.
I
And
didn't watch.
it hurt me. It made me feel terrible. Well, the problem is now with I don't know if that was a true video or not a true video. And that I mean, that's how confusion abounds right now. Confusion abounds. And I don't know
Right.
how it can't. I don't know how it can abound because how do I know that that was a good video? I don't know. How do I know even the reporting I'm seeing from any source is the truth now with AI and how they can make so many things look so real.
Right.
It's really scary. It really
But
is.
I mean, there are first of all, you can tell. I can you can zoom in and there are many things, but they are really good. They are really good.
They're getting better and better by
I
the
think
by the
well
minute,
that
literally.
that that is then how do you trust your institution? You voted for someone, you voted for a party that believes in smaller government, yet they're allowing corporations to become their own kind of governing bodies, and especially in regard to AI, and there's no control on what a company can do right now and not have to label it AI or not. I mean, we could call our Congress people and ask them to start fighting harder to label things as AI, even in media sources when because the media uses AI. I don't know if
Of
the
course.
general population understands that. Like I think I'll never forget to when I was watching bef- this was like 8 or 9 years ago. I was watching uh one of the top major four networks. I'm not going to say which one it is, and they were talking about a riot that broke out and they were making it sound so bad, and then they had footage in the upper corner of this attack and it looked even worse than they were making it sound, and then in really small font it said this is stock footage. And I'm thinking you're putting out there this imagery that is so powerful.
It
You're
was a riot
lying.
from 20 years ago. Yeah.
It wasn't even it could have been from staged footage or whatever, it doesn't matter. Or it could have been now, to my point, it could be AI. They could generate everything and put it slap on a cryon and throw it up in the upper corner, and the people are gonna believe it. So this is my question. Then how do you know when to believe and when to
I
challenge?
can't answer that. I can't answer that because I don't know. There's no definitive way of telling you this is what I do to, there's certain people maybe that I would trust more than others, but that doesn't mean they're not capable of lying or presenting falsehood. I mean, this goes all the way back to what we were talking about a couple podcasts ago. That I remember my grandpa telling me that the moon landing didn't happen, and they're in Arizona. I mean, could they have staged that in 1969? I suppose they could have. Why couldn't they have? I don't know, but I totally believe that they didn't. I mean, when that trust factor breaks down to the point where it's getting in our society now, it's a big problem. It's a huge problem.
So, have you watched the clip that I sent you that has kind of made it around the world by now of Tucker Carlson?
Yes.
And what are your thoughts?
Well, ask questions because I don't remember. I don't know what you're looking
I
for
mean,
with
he
that.
basically is coming out and saying that he made a mistake backing Trump and that he regrets endorsing him and he feels responsible, and he actually said that sorry doesn't suffice, but he doesn't know what else to do or say, but that he completely no longer believes this man is fit to serve office, and it doesn't have the intention of Christians or America.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tucker said some other things about Israel that I don't agree with too. So it sounds like Tucker's having a crisis in his life. I don't know if it's what's caused it or what put him where he's at. And
Wait, you just did something that Donald Trump does, which is, and I'm not comparing you to Donald Trump, but you just said that if something doesn't check out with what you believe, there must be a crazy reason. Like he has this
I
crisis
don't think
in
it's
his life.
crazy. I don't know where I was just getting ready to say, I don't know where he's at with that. What he said about Israel, I totally disagree with.
What did you disagree with?
Well, that whole interview with the senator from Texas that I always forget his name.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, basically he doesn't want to say, and it's almost like replacement theology. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about that, but he doesn't want to believe that Israel, and this is my view of what Tucker said. I'm not saying this
Okay.
is what Tucker said.
Yeah,
Let's let the
but this is how
audience
you
know that
took it. This
now.
is what I want to know. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, basically, he thinks that why is Israel God's chosen people? That was his question. That was his question to that senator. That was his question now, outstandingly. And if he doesn't understand that basic concept, then Tucker's not the person I thought he was. That's that simple. When he asks me that kind of question out loud, then I don't have to. I'm not thinking he's crazy. I'm not. I'm just thinking his theology and his philosophy doesn't match mine anymore. And I thought at one
What
time
are
it
you
did.
challenging him as, a Christian or as someone that doesn't believe, or what? Because
Well,
this, by the way, is the question I led with, which is like, where does your what makes you distrust someone? So because what
So
I
what
heard
would
from
make
Tucker
someone?
Carlson wasn't that he doesn't believe that Israel deserves a right to exist and doesn't believe that Jews face persecution and that anti-Semitic attacks are bad and that they happen regularly. What I heard him say is that when he did anything to give pushback on not the state of Israel, but the people currently running the state of Israel, the country of
Right.
Israel, he should be able to do that without feeling, wait, hold on, let me get the whole thought out. He should be able to feel that way without retribution from the sitting president who, up until that moment, loved everything that Tucker Carlson stood for and had his back and all of these things. The minute the minute that someone like Tucker Carlson, I've used Liz Cheney in the past, and people were like, "Well, she was a rhino and she was never really a real Republican." This that, but anytime a Republican, so far that I can see, every Republican, every single Republican, including people that he nominated and appointed on his personal cabinet, anytime that they've come out with a criticism against Trump, they are automatically there's something wrong with them. They didn't do something. They had a change of. They did a this that. I think personally, when I listened to that whole interview that Tucker gave, I heard him say, I am a conservative. I believe in smaller government. I believe in America first. I believe in God. I believe that Israel has a right to exist. But I also believe that we are in a war that we didn't have a plan for. We didn't think it was going to go this way. And we can't get out of it now. And we've started something bigger. And the conflict is outside of was what was meant to be, and now I feel like it's we're losing control.
So
And he's
so
not the
his
only person that
insight.
said that.
Well, that's fine, but what I'm saying is his insight to what the war should be may not have matched unless Donald Trump used him as a consultant. Why would it have to match Tucker Carlson's? But that's not
No,
what I.
I agree with you. No, that's not the
You know,
but the point.
that's his opinion, and he's entitled to that, and I respect him for that. But that's not the interview I'm talking about. I'm talking about what he said when he was being interviewed or interviewing that United States senator from Texas, and you know who I'm talking about. I just can't think of his name right now, Matt.
Ted Cruz, I don't.
Yeah, no, yes, Ted Cruz. That's who it is. I always forget that name, and I don't know why. But basically, he asked the question and doesn't think anymore that Israel is God's chosen people. And he says,
Tucker said that he doesn't think that they're God's
that's
chosen people.
exactly how he asked, why is Israel God's chosen people? Why are they saying that? Because they don't. And Ted Cruz did his best as a senator to answer it. He's not a theologian, and that really soured me on what I thought Tucker Carlson understood as a Christian. So that's all I'm saying. That's just
But
one
why do you
one
think he asked
example.
the question?
I don't know why he asked the question. I know as a Christian I would never ask that question. I don't need to. I know what the Bible says, and I know that they are God's chosen people. Now, if I
Okay.
had to explain it, I can, but and you know where I'm coming from with that, and
But what
so
I
that
don't
makes me
but what
think
I
that
think
his.
the perspective, go ahead.
So well, I no longer trust his perspective. No, I didn't say he's wrong on some of the other stuff he
But here's
said.
my question to you, Dad, because I know that you know how inner circles work, and I know that you know how connections work, and I know that like these people that are seated around all of the talking mics, whether they're on NBC, MSNBC, Fox, they're all colleagues. They all went to the same schools together. They all came up under the same programs together, and they've all networked around DC together, especially
Sure, a lot of them, yeah.
anyone that's covering politics. They know each other, they know where they stand on things, and they also have privy to a lot of insight things that even with source they don't come out and say because of whatever reason, whether it's leverage for them as a reporter or I don't know what certain things get covered and why certain things don't get covered. But my point is, I think personally that Tucker Carlson probably has a lot more information and access than even what he's speaking on.
Could
And if
be.
and if that's the case, at what point, how many, I guess, let me ask you this, how many people would you need to hear from that someone's a bad person before you believe that they're really a bad person, even though you never saw them to be a bad person on your own and you believed that their heart and intent was right because of the acts that they did for you.
That's exactly right, and that's biblical what you just said. Whatever their fruit produces, that's how I'll know them. That and that's what that's all the only way I can answer that. Not by what you say or what by someone else says, but what I see them do, what I know that they do. Now
But
it's
okay,
hard.
so destruction for the sake of your cause then would be worth the destruction if they could have been avoided by a better leader or a stronger someone that was more principled or someone that had better conviction or a better way to strategize.
Oh, there could always be someone better, Matt, but we don't know that. It could be someone way worse too. I mean, you can sit here and be objective about all of it, but the fact is, it is what it is, and that's where we're at. You know,
But that's my question is, okay, well, let me ask you this. When do you think regular average German citizens realized that Hitler maybe had ulterior motives?
I can't answer that. I know that they
Because it
stuck with
was
him to the bitter end.
well, what was so interesting is, the book that I'm writing right now, and it's a novel, but it's historical fiction, and that I've done a ton of research on what led up the Action T4 and what led up to even getting it to a place in a country where, as hard as it is to wrap your head around, any country could get behind one group or race of people and say that they all need to be extinguished, which again is not happening in certain parts of the world where people say it's happening, but it is happening in other parts of the world where people are ignoring it completely.
Yeah,
Um,
Nigeria.
right. But what led up to that, going prior to all of that, was uh Hitler's ability to convince people who had children who were disabled, people whether they were physically or mentally disabled, um, convinced them to go into these institutions where they were basically slowly extinguished. And when society was okay with it, they were called useless eaters. And when society was okay with deeming one person in society one way, now we have no problem kind of turning a blind eye to it. My question for you is, what in our current climate politically and with our current leadership in this country, what are the good things that you see that how he's bringing or trying to cultivate community or bring people together? What are some of the things that you see
I
in
don't see. I don't see these doing that right now, and that's okay because right now he's keeping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. That's all I care about right now. What he's doing, number one. I mean, the question you're asking, and going back to Hitler, it would be it would be the same thing that's going on right now in America as far as what we did to the unborn child and saying that they're disposable. That's one thing that bothered me, as you know, very very much. That would be a telltale sign. The party that says that an unborn child is disposable, I'm against that. The
who's
party that now
who's
wait, let me
wait, hold on.
finish. Let me finish my
Wait,
thought. The same thing with guns. Hitler came and took all their guns away. That would have been a red flag immediate for me, just like it is right now. If the party that's going to take my guns away, that's a red flag. So these are the things that you're asking about. And Hitler did those things. He took people who were not useful to society and said they weren't worth it and threw them away. Then he came in and took the guns away, which
okay, but you're saying that people on the left are thinking that any giving access to a woman's right to choose if she's been raped to abort the baby, or if there's
forget the rape. We've talked about this a
no, no,
million
no, no.
times.
You can't
That's
forget.
less
You
than
don't get to
one.
forget. You don't
That's
get
less than 1%.
that.
Rape.
That fact is not correct, Dad. And we're
Well,
not going
okay.
to hold on.
I'll
Hold
give
on.
you the rate, Matt. I'll give you the rate. I'll give
I'm
you the
just
rate.
saying. I'm
Anybody
saying
who's raped and can
you're
prove it.
comparing, Dad. You're comparing something that hasn't happened with something that Trump. You're
It's
comparing that.
happening right now. What are you talking about? In Colorado, they have late term abortions. Come on.
What is a late
Stop
term
it.
abortion? What is a late term abortion?
Well, I don't want any at
What is
all.
a late
But
term abortion?
anything past 12 weeks.
What and why would they be having them?
I have no idea. I can't
You
answer
you
that.
we tabled this 4 episodes ago when you didn't believe me that in Kansas women are dying because doctors can't, and in Texas because doctors can't perform an abortion to save the woman. So, or where there's an
I never
endoscopic abortion
show
where the
me one.
baby dies.
Bring me an article.
You already said that we tabled this, and we
Bring
will.
me an article.
I'm going to when I have
Bring me an
someone who.
incident. Just an
Dad,
incident.
Dad, I'm going to, but I want to get
Okay.
back to what the question is at hand, which you haven't answered, which is currently you have a leader that you openly said doesn't bring people together. You're worried about Iran. Great. I'm worried about a leader that can do more than one thing. First of all,
Well,
I
I
want
think
someone
he's
to be
done
able to
way more
focus
than
on
one
more than just
thing.
one thing. But
How come every one of these are going back to Trump? Are we going to talk about what we're talking about, or we're going to go back to Trump on every podcast?
what do you mean? We're going back to Trump because Trump's our current president. If
That's
Biden
fine.
were
That's fine, but not everything revolves around him right now. You want it to, but it doesn't.
you're
It
putting
just doesn't.
you're assuming a lot,
There are
right
so
now,
many things that are happening right
and you're
now in
getting
this
really
world.
upset. And so
I'm not upset at all. I'm telling you
okay,
like it is. And it's not I'm not spouting any facts. I'm just telling you this is what we've done. You want me to say something I'm not going to say.
what I want,
Okay.
no, I don't want you to say something that you're not going to say. What I want you to do is to answer the question you asked me. Why does it keep coming back to Trump?
And I've told you exactly what I felt about that a million times. And it just happened the other day that the Supreme Court that he appointed turned down two terrible laws in Colorado. And I applaud that. It has nothing to do with Iran or nothing. But that was the Supreme Court he appointed. It finally made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. There was terrible legislation coming out of Colorado's legislators.
Okay,
And
what
they
were the
made
two
laws that were unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court turned them down.
Okay, what were they?
So that made me happy. That's a good thing he did. You asked me there's a great thing he
What
did.
were the two laws, Dad?
I don't remember what they were, but they're easily, you can find it out. One was a Senate bill and one was a House bill. But I'm just telling you.
Okay, wait. So let's talk about this. Hold on. These two horrible laws.
I know what the laws were about. I know what the laws were about. I don't know what the laws about. HB 31 or SB 31. I don't know what they were called.
What was it?
It was about a Christian's right to have the ability to say you can't come to our school if your child if you are a same-sex couple and we don't want you to school. And the left formed that as they can't get funding and they can't do this, and the Supreme Court came back and said no, if you don't follow, and it was a Catholic school in Denver, if you don't follow that religion and believe those things, then they can keep you from coming to that school. And that's what that was about.
So wait, hold on. So
and they won.
So in Colorado, a Catholic school was challenged by two Catholic schools were challenged by
two bills just came back.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let's just focus on the one you just talked about, Dad.
I'm looking at it
in Colorado. A Catholic school said to a same-sex couple who had a kid that they wanted to enroll in the school, no, you can't have your kid here. Okay, well, that's a private institute. That should never have been an issue. But then this is the question that I have for you and the queer parents. The two, was it a man and a man or a woman?
I have no idea. I don't know if it was.
Okay, so wait, put the phone down and stop looking for the other bill and let's have a conversation. Okay. Then this is my question to you, and I would pose this question. I'm going to pose two separate questions. First, to the queer parents. Why are you fighting to get your kid enrolled in a school in a religion that you don't believe in, that most on the left think up until a couple of weeks ago, the Catholic Church was like evil, that they molested kids, which they did, and never served any time punishment, any kind of institutional punishment and or financial punishment other than they paid off families of little girls and boys that they molested over generations.
Right.
So the fact that this queer, here's why, because Catholic schools have wonderful education. So here's a challenge to the whole queer community and the whole left and that I align myself with. Let's start fighting for better public funding and better public education and stop letting the rich make private schools be the only place where kids can learn, number one, because that's why that queer couple was probably fighting to get their kid into that private Catholic school, was that they were going to receive a really good education, or it probably led into a university or a college track that they really liked. But at the same time, you're going to subject your child to the Catholic Church because you have to go to mass, or will they let you opt out of that? And then why should they let you opt out of it? There's so many things that annoy me about that whole argument in the first place. And then to you, the question is, why do you care one way or another?
You asked me. I don't care. Well, I do care, but that's a whole different argument that we're drifting into. You asked me something that Trump did that I think was really, really good, and it was the appointing of the
Right.
justices
So
he did. That's all.
you,
That's
no,
I
but
was
you
using that
said,
as an example.
but
That's it.
I know, but you said
By
it's
the
good.
way,
So why
let me
is it a
read
good
this so
example?
let me read this so the audience knows that I wasn't just making something up. The U.S. Supreme Court agreed on April 20th, 2026 to hear a case involving Colorado Catholic preschools excluding from the state's universal preschool program. The school argued that the state requirements to accept LGBTQ plus families violate their religious freedom, while the state argues public funds cannot support discrimination. And they passed a law saying that. The legal conflict, Colorado law requires providers to follow non-discriminatory rules regarding sexual orientation, gender identity to receive funding. These schools claim this violates their religious freedom. Well, it came back in the Supreme Court.
Dad, they won. We get it. I didn't want to get into the facts and figures of something. I wanted to talk the emotion
Okay.
of something.
Okay, so
And you already
I
so
care, but that is what we were talking about. I just used that as an example. That's all I was doing.
you used it as an example of something good that Trump did. Why is it good? Tell me why it's good.
It's good because
You don't
it
want your
allowed.
public money to fund queer families to have kids?
No, no, it was just the opposite of that. They were going to take the public funding away from the Catholic schools because they wouldn't let those kids in.
Right. That's what
And
I'm saying.
And the Catholic school says, "Hey, you give funding to everybody. We can use it any way we want." And that's basically how it went down. And you have to read it to know it
No.
better.
I'm not asking about what went down. I know what went down. What went down is that this queer family was turned away from a Catholic school, and the school still gets
That's how
public
I
money.
understand it.
Right.
That's how
But
I
what
don't
I'm
know if that's
asking is
true.
what part of it you said something. I asked you, the whole thing is you're giving me examples of something Trump did good. Is it because Trump put in Supreme Court justices that follow the law? Is that what the good thing is?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I wasn't
Yes.
clear about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it has. We could
well,
argue forever.
we don't
Yeah,
have
you're
to
right.
argue. I think it's absurd. I think the Catholic school had a right to exclude. I don't know why a queer couple would want to send their kid to a Catholic school outside of a really good education. It seems weird to me that the
And the one that
ideology that you're
okay.
bringing your kid into this community that has a non-traditional family, and you're going to put them in a program where everything is based on Adam and Eve and traditional
Tradition.
value and
Right.
core value.
Right.
It's confusing to me, so I can only imagine how confusing it must be to a kid. But with this thing that happened with the Supreme Court getting involved, where I think it challenges most things that have to do with organized religion is, why are organized religions tax exempt, especially now that they're getting public funds? Because there are churches who preach hate. There are.
Right. Oh, of course. And by the way, I want to clarify something because I may have misspoke. The one that just won was about counseling. That they passed two laws that you couldn't counsel transgenders. It was illegal for the Catholic Church or a Christian counselor to counsel transgenders. That one just passed. This one's still pending, but there's two bills. There's two bills out there that just passed this week, and I heard that.
Okay.
It went to the Supreme Court, and I really heard it in passing, Matt. There was three
Okay,
bills.
but that's the whole point of this conversation, is where you get your information is framed in a way that it serves your faith, your beliefs.
Right. But the fact is, the Supreme Court did shoot down the Colorado law. The Colorado law got passed and said that we can't do this as Christians. And the Supreme Court said, oh, yeah, they can. And that was the counseling of transgender young kids.
And my question is, and that's fine. That's a ruling by the Supreme Court, and I respect it. And also, I kind of agree. Public institutions. If I spend $500,000 of my dollars that I earned to open up a private company, whatever, and I'm being told that I have to do this or that or the other, that's a problem for me because it's a private
Right.
company. We
Right.
reserve the right to refuse
Keep the
business.
government out of it.
It goes back
Keep
to the cake baker that didn't wanna bake a cake for a queer couple. It's like, well, fine, don't bake a cake for a queer couple, and also queer couple, are you why are you dying on the cross for this cake? Is it that good? Or
yeah.
do you just wanna be seen and heard by and that's where Gen Z is. They want everyone to acquiesce to everything that they want, and
Right.
so it's kind of getting us nowhere. We don't have
But
much
not
time in this
right.
podcast.
But not
Um,
everybody, Matt, not everybody in your community thinks that way. You're very you're
Not
very
everybody in
grounded.
your community thinks the way that
Right.
you think.
Right. I know.
Uh,
And you said that about me before. So that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we're a little bit
or it's
open-minded. I don't
I
want
don't
to
know
say
if people
common
think we're
sense.
open-minded. I don't I think some people would probably have a problem with the fact that I have a problem with a queer couple wanting to send their kid to a Catholic
Right.
school,
No, I see what you're saying.
in
And
my
I'm sure
community and in yours, on the left especially. Okay, we're short on time, so let's end it with this. Why do you think young people are tired and old people are confused about who gets to define the truth?
oh, well, first of all, I don't agree with that statement.
Okay, what's wrong with that statement? I think it's
I
a
don't think old people are confused.
perfect statement.
I don't think old people are confused. I think probably young people
I
are
think old people are
confused.
confused about who gets to tell the truth.
Right. I would switch it. I thought about that because when you sent it to me, I looked at it and I thought, I think young people are more confused and old people are more tired. That's what I think. Because we did have the three ABC, NBC, and CBS. We did have solid reporting, and now we don't. I'm not confused. I don't believe any of them. I'm not confused at all. I'm tired of all the crap. I'm tired of it.
But you're
That I
still
can't rely
trusting.
on anything.
Here's why I think the young people are tired because they know it's all BS and they don't even know what to do about their future or like where to even start. I think old people are confused because everything that they believed has been kind of turned upside down.
Not at all.
A lot of things have been.
Not at all.
Okay.
Everything I believe, I still believe. Everything.
I don't know, Dad.
I mean, I know what you're saying. You're saying what got turned upside down is I can't look at NBC now and trust them.
Right.
That's true. That's true. But it
But
doesn't
you'll still
confuse
hear
me.
something in passing and share it as if you learned it from the news.
Well, but it was true. I looked it up and it did. Yes, the Supreme
This
Court.
time.
Yeah, the Supreme Court did turn
I'll
it down.
get you next time, Gadget. Next time.
It's hard. It's not confusing. It's hard. I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. And I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer how to determine what's the truth and what isn't the truth. I think I rely on my spirit that guides me, and I think that's what it's going to have to come down to because there's going to be so many things. You're going to have to be so grounded in your faith. I think um, it's the old cliche, and I hate to say it, but if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for
You'll fall for
anything.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I think too. My thing is whether it's a moral compass led by faith and hope, or it's an ethical compass led by hope and humanity and science, these two ideas aren't far from one another, and we should be able to find space for both. And where it gets tricky is on those fringe things that are way more fringe. You use figures like 1%. I don't know that we have actual figures on things, but they're far more fringe and they get so much more oxygen. Once again, how do we help people come together? And whether you're leading with a moral compass, an ethical compass, these compasses both require kindness, patience, and trust. And the trust is the hard one right now because we've been kind of burned by trust, not just by our political leaders, not just by our athletes and entertainers, but also by our media and our journalists who we really did for a long time in this country rely on to hold our leaders accountable, and they can't even hold themselves accountable right now.
right.
It's frustrating.
I agree. I totally agree. I
Well,
mean, you have to find people in your circle that you trust and care about, and that's the trust that counts because that's what it's going to come down to in the end. And
I
remember,
love that.
he gave us faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And
Perfect.
it might be naive to think that, but you're going to have to start loving people you don't want to love. You're going to
All
have
right. Well, I love you, Dad.
to. I love you too.
Thank you all for listening. Lead with love, hope, and whatever faith you believe. Hopefully, it's a good one. Hopefully, it's leading with love.